So welcome everybody. This webinar is specifically about playing sports in college. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. And fun fact, you can play your sport in college. So I'm sure we have a mix of people in this group today. Some who maybe have thought long and hard about playing their sport in college, but maybe some people are on here who aren't sure, they're not quite aware of their options. And so this webinar is really to serve both sides of the camp and to definitely help you guys just get a nice big view of college athletics, what's available to you, what your options are, what different programs have to offer, and hopefully by the end you'll be able to have a better idea of what you're looking for and then what you can pursue in terms of college athletics. So before we get started, who am I? Why am I talking about this? So my name is Danielle DePace, and I am the Associate Director of Human Resources at Enlighium Academy, but I am also a collegiate women's lacrosse coach. So I've been coaching for over 6 years now. I have coached at Whitworth University for those 6 years. I've also coached high school teams as well. So I've been a head coach for high school and assistant coach for college. And in my role, I have done a ton of high school recruiting, gone to tournaments, traveled all over the country for it. And I've seen this process. Some of our former high school players now play with us. A lot of them play at other colleges as well. So that is my experience with college and college athletics. And so I figured with my experience and expertise, I wanted to share that with our students at Enlighium. But with that, my experience is in women's lacrosse in college at a D3 level. So the school I coach at is at a Division III level. So I'm not going to be as well versed in other sports, but my knowledge does expand beyond lacrosse and beyond the D3 division. So a lot of times in the recruiting world of college sports, different sports have different timelines, different standards. Their recruiting processes might be different. So just know that my experience is in women's lacrosse, but hopefully I can still give a lot of wisdom into just the overall recruiting process. But you might need to do a little bit more research about your specific sport. So just wanted to kind of give that disclaimer before we start. All right, so where are we headed today? So first, we're going to talk through the different divisions. So we're going NCAA divisions and the NAIA. Then we're going to talk about some things for you to consider to try to figure out what's the best fit for you. And then we're going to do a little college sports personal quiz to kind of help you discover that. And then last, we're going to end with some recruiting tips on recruiting, what that recruiting process looks like from a coach's perspective and kind of what you should do. It's going to be a very simplified version, but hopefully to just get your foot in the door on this process. So some of this you might already know. Some of this might be totally new to you. I know I didn't know much of this until I started to coach, in all honesty. So when I was your age in high school, I didn't know much about the different divisions or anything like that. So we're definitely going to cover as much of it as we can, but we're doing a pretty top-down view. So bear with me. It'll be a lot of information, but hopefully it'll be really good for you guys to know. So to start, we're going to talk about the NCAA. So we have the National Collegiate Association, or National Collegiate Athletic Association. So this is probably what you're more familiar with. So they have over 1,000 member schools. And this is going to be, if you're watching a sport on TV and it's college, it's NCAA most likely. So that's your Ohio States, that's your Penn State, that's your Kentucky, that's your Gonzaga. So if you're watching March Madness or any championships, that's probably going to fall under the NCAA. But then there's also the NAIA. So this one's lesser known because it's smaller, but that's the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics. And that's about 250 schools. So not quite as many, not as known, but definitely a viable option for a lot of athletes. Here's kind of the breakdown between the two. We're going to go into more detail in a second, but just to kind of give an overview. So the NCAA, it's bigger, more schools are represented, and NAIA, smaller, less schools represented. For scholarships, NCAA gives full ride options only in Division I and Division II, because NCAA is broken up into the 3 divisions. So Division I, Division II can give out scholarships for athletics. Division III cannot. For NAIA, they also provide athletic scholarships, but they're just going to be less funding overall. For the competition level, NCAA is going to have your highest competition level, especially at D1. But NAIA is very strong in competition, but generally going to be a little bit lower than Division One. In terms of the academic emphasis, NCAA has some pretty strict requirements. So essentially to kind of, before we get too far ahead, the NCAA and the NAIA exist to govern the sport. So in college athletics, any sport, it's just a governing body. So they regulate safety measures, they regulate the time commitment that students can do, what coaches can and can't do. So I'm super heavily regulated by the NCAA in terms of when I can contact students, when I can't. Even my own players, right now it's our dead period, so I can't talk to them about lacrosse at all. I can talk to them, I can see how they're doing, but I can't talk to them about our sport at all. That could be a huge violation against me and I could lose my ability to coach. So these are the governing bodies that protect the students, protect the play. That's why they exist. So some of what they govern is just the requirement aspects for students. So for NCAA, things like GPA requirements. So if you're in college and your GPA falls below a certain point, you might not be eligible to play your sport anymore until you fix your grades. NAIA also has standards, but it's a little bit more flexible with the student. So it's not quite as strict. And then in terms of that eligibility piece of it, NCAA is stricter, it has more rules around it, and NAIA is just a little bit more flexible all around. So there's kind of the comparison of the two. And now we're going to break down the divisions. So some of this might be a little familiar to you guys, but just to kind of let you know what are your options, right? So Division One, this is going to be NCAA Division One. This is your highest level of competition, right? So in this setting, athletics typically can come before academics. So you might be asked to leave class. You might be asked to miss out on events that your school is putting on if the sport requires it. So this is going to be like your bigger schools. You probably know D1 schools. D1 can offer athletic scholarships to athletes, full ride, sometimes partial, and they have a lot more money to play with. It's the highest level of competition. It's also the highest level of expectations and commitment for their student athletes. And it's usually going to be larger schools with a larger athletic budget. So some schools that fall under this, you have your Ohio State, Duke University, North Carolina, University of Alabama, Penn State, Louisiana State, University of Florida. So again, if you're watching March Madness, Final Four, any of that, like it's D1. So these are probably the most familiar schools with you. The other divisions, maybe not so much. So Division II, they are definitely competitive, but they're going to be less intense than D1. It's a balance between that athletic and the academic more so than the D1 provides. D2 can also offer athletic scholarships. You might see less full ride scholarships, more partial scholarships, and it kind of allows them to split up their funds a little bit better. D2 athletes still are going to devote a lot of time to their sport, but there's going to be a little bit more balance and a little bit more flexibility in terms of athletics, academics, and maybe some other activities outside of that, but still pretty high demand on the athletic side, especially if you're talking scholarships. D2 schools are often going to be a little bit smaller than D1, think medium-sized, and they're going to have a moderate athletic budget. So some schools that fall into the D2 category, well, I can't read all. In the University of Tampa, you got the University of West Florida, Grand Valley State University, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, which is not a confusing name at all, and Northwest Missouri State University. So maybe schools that you're not as aware that they exist unless maybe you live by them or you know someone who attended them. But D2 schools, there's a lot. All right, so D3, this is my world. So D3, it's the most academically focused. So definitely we prioritize the academics over the athletic side of it. So we're not asking you to skip out on classes. Very rarely will we do that, and we work around your schedule. Oop, and I just saw a typo. Good for me. So next one, so D3 schools, they don't offer athletic scholarships, but most of them will have pretty good academic scholarships and also financial aid based on needs. So no athletic scholarship, but we're going to talk a little bit more about options for finances later. D3 athletes, they have a lighter athletic schedule. So this allows a lot more freedom for students to pursue extracurriculars or internships, go travel. study abroad, those types of things, far more flexible for a D3 school versus D2, D1 might not even be an option. And they vary in school size, but it's going to be a smaller school. And there might be less resources than D1 and D2 for the athletes specifically. With all of these schools, as I talk about them, it is going to vary. These are definitely generalizations. So you'll have pretty large Division III schools with amazing budgets. You'll have Division III schools that are pretty small. Academics aren't a huge focus. Even in the conference that we compete in, it's similar. Like our school, we're pretty well taken care of. But then there's some other schools in our conference where athletics is just not a priority, so they don't get as much. And that's going to be how it is for Division I, II, and III. A lot of variations are going to be seen amongst all of them. So this is just a generalization of each of them. Okay, some examples of D3 schools. So you got Tufts University, my school, Whitworth University, Middlebury College, University of St. Thomas, Amherst College, Johns Hopkins University. Something very interesting about how the divisions break up too. A lot of times the divisions are broken up due to the size of the school, just the finances that they have, the resources they have. So you're not going to find a D1 school that's like 3,000 students. That just doesn't make sense. What's really interesting is Johns Hopkins falls into this funny category because it's a D3 school, but their lacrosse program is actually D1, which is very strange. So when I saw that at first, I was like, I know for a fact Johns Hopkins is a pretty well-known name in the lacrosse community for college. They're definitely D1. So that can happen when you'll have a split. So a sport could be at a different division, typically a higher division than the overall school. So it's going to be more specialized sports, ones that maybe aren't as common, like lacrosse, hockey falls into that category, something like that, where maybe it's not as widespread in the college world. And it has to do with the history of this sport. So like I know for Johns Hopkins, they've had their program for a long time and they're really great and they're really competitive. And so due to that history of competitiveness and the records that they've had, it wouldn't make sense for them to be D3. So they kind of get an exception to play up, because if they were playing at D3, they'd probably dominate pretty well. So they need to play up to the level that makes the most sense for them. So be aware of that. It's rare, but it can happen to where your sport might be at a different division than the rest of the school. All right, so that was all NCAA. Now we're getting to NAIA, which probably you're less familiar with this. So let's talk about it. So it is going to be most similar to a D2 college in terms of competitiveness, size, and resources. They have a unique set of colleges and universities, and they're typically smaller, but sometimes they're more regionally focused too. NAIA can also offer athletic scholarships, and they often have a little bit more flexibility with how they distribute their funds. Remember, NAIA has a little bit less regulations around them totally, so coaches and schools have a little bit more flexibility with what they can do with their money and other things. So it's definitely going to be similar to D2 in terms of that athletic and academic balance. So still heavy on the athletics, but maybe some room to do some other things that you're interested in. And it focuses on developing that well-rounded student. So it definitely encourages that sport and academic balance. All right. So some examples of NAIA schools, you got Georgetown University, Oklahoma State University, Indiana Wesleyan, Xavier University of Louisiana. So schools that might not be as well known, but maybe if you live around these, you know someone who went to them, you might know these schools. So that was a lot of information, summary. D1 schools, NCAA school, it's going to be the highest competition, full scholarship options available, and it's a pretty intense time commitment. D2, a little bit less competitive, but it also has partial and full athletic scholarships available, and it's going to be a more moderate time commitment. D3 has a higher focus on the academic side versus the athletic side, and there's no athletic scholarships available, but there's definitely more balance to the student's schedule. NAIA, most similar to a D2 school, full and partial athletic scholarship options, and it's a moderate time commitment that still allows for some flexibility. So these are going to be your primary options of playing a sport. But I do want to mention just one more option too that can be a really great option for students, and that's club sports. And a lot of times people might not consider this, but club sports, schools will have maybe their official team sport, and then they might also have a club sport. So these are going to be less competitive, which can be a benefit to people, right? They typically play against other club teams, but I know even for my school, like we're a D3 school, and we're really close to Gonzaga University, which is a D1 school, and they have a club lacrosse team. And so we've played against them in competition. It's not going to count towards conference play because they're not our conference, but it's still an opportunity for us to play. So club sports, they might play other club teams, or they might play any school that wants to play them. And obviously club sports, there's no scholarship options, and it's typically going to be student-led. So sometimes you might have students who are the coaches, you might have an official coach, but there's definitely going to be less time commitment, more flexibility. And because it's not necessarily going through the school the same way that the official teams are, students often have to pay dues to cover expenses such as equipment, travel, league fees, but some schools might also provide funding. So club sports vary greatly amongst colleges. So I know in the lacrosse world, there's some teams that are really well organized. They're amazing. They're really high level play. I think Gonzaga University falls under that one. Even though I don't even know if they have an official coach, I think they have players who are coaches, but their level of competition is still really high versus some other club teams, not going to be as serious, not going to be as intense, right? So it varies. But in my world, so one of my high school players that I coached, she ended up going to the University of Denver, and they have, I think they're D1, and they have a lacrosse team, and she wasn't sure if she wanted to play with them, didn't know if she wanted that time commitment, but she figured I'll talk to the coach and, get a sense for what my options might be. And at the time, there wasn't a need on the team, but she ended up joining Denver's club sport, so their club lacrosse team, and that was a great fit for her. She got to practice, she got to play, she even traveled with the team, but it allowed for a lot more flexibility in her schedule and a lot less intensity than what she was looking for. And so it was, or a lot less intensity than what the D1 team would have had her be at. So club sports can be a viable option for people, just depends on what you're looking for in your sporting experience in college. All right, there's a lot of information, but I did want to point out two things to consider when we're talking about what division, what level might be best for you. And so these are things that I've seen that kind of can be a hindrance to students. So number one is scholarships. So being able to get paid to play your sport is amazing. That's such an amazing thing. But I think some people get a little bit too fixated on it. And I think they can kind of get blinded by a school offering them money. So again, this isn't everybody. I know we have varying levels of play on this call. And so some of you absolutely might be offered scholarships. Maybe not full ride, maybe full ride, partial. But I want to make sure that you guys understand some of the elements of how to get the best bang for your buck. So for example, D3, we don't offer athletic scholarships, but we offer academic scholarships. And sometimes academic scholarship is going to provide a lot more finances for you than an athletic scholarship. So I've seen cases where a D2 school offers a player, $5,000 or $10,000 of athletic scholarship, which is great. That's no chump change, right? But then they could potentially get $15,000, $20,000 on an academic scholarship. So for you, think about, hey, what are your grades like right now? If you have a decent GPA, high grades, good extracurriculars, if you have good references, those could all potentially contribute to a pretty nice academic scholarship. So don't be blinded by a decent academic scholarship or athletic scholarship. Be aware of your options. And so you can talk to the admissions department about that at the school you're looking at. You can talk to the coach about what those options are, and they should be honest with you and let you know what might be the best option for you. But maybe if your grades aren't the best, they're not, 4.0s or anything like that, then maybe looking at an athletic scholarship might be a better option. But again, it's not something you need to play in college, but it obviously we love getting money, so that would be great. Another thing to consider is division bias. So I've seen this a lot. I've heard this from many, many coaches, both for my sport, other sports, men's teams, women's teams. And a lot of times students have this idea in their head of a dream school they want to play for or a division level that they think they want to play at. And I know 100% for a fact that there are students at Enlighium who are D1 material, 100%. I know for a fact that there are students who are most likely going to play D1. They're going to be at top schools. They're going to have recruits coming after them for sure. And that's great. And I guarantee that there's someone on this call too who also D1 would be a great fit for them in terms of what they're looking for and in terms of your level of play and your skill set. But I think sometimes students get kind of blinded by the big names. I know for me, I'm from Ohio originally, so Ohio State is, I'm a big fan, and I definitely wanted to play lacrosse at Ohio State. And I think those are great things to pursue, but don't let the idea of playing at a specific school or at a specific division maybe take away some options that might even be better for you and might create a better experience for you as a student athlete. So it's great to pursue those things. I think those are wonderful things to pursue. But understand too, as a coach, I say this with so much love and care for you guys, but I want to be honest with you. I've been in a lot of scenarios and I've heard a lot of coaches over the years say something to the sentiment of, yeah, this student thinks they're going to play D1. They're not going to play D1. And we see it as coaches, right? I can see the potential in somebody and I can see their drive, their determination, and their skill set. And I know in my world, I've coached high school players who think they're going to go D1, but their skill set is not there. And it's not to say they can't get there. It's not to say that they're not worthy of playing in that position, but there are standards for a reason. And so be honest with your coaches, ask your coaches what their opinions are. If you're in meetings with recruiting coaches, talk to them about, what they think your level of play is. And if you could keep up with the rest of the team because they're going to look at what's best for the team too. So just wanted to have you guys kind of think through those things as well to make sure that you're not missing out on an opportunity that would be really great for you. So, with all of that information, how do you know what's best for you? So what's the best fit for me? How do I know what school I should go to? We're going to talk through a couple of things and then we're going to have a little quiz to help you guys very loosely narrow down what you might be looking for. So to start, let's talk about commitment level. So what do you want your commitment level to be like in college? Do you want to eat, sleep, and breathe your sport? Do you want that, do you want your sport to kind of be a part of your life throughout the fall, the winter, the spring, and the summer? Do you want to do camps? Do you want to do two-a-days? Or maybe you're like, I'm totally great with playing my sport during the season, but maybe I don't want to be required to do all these other things. Maybe you don't want your sports to get in the way of your academics. So something to think through as you're trying to figure out what you want. What do you actually want that commitment level to look like for you in college? And with that, life outside of sports, right? Do you want your sport to kind of consume your mornings and your evenings? Do you want sports to just be a part of your life, but you also want to go pursue other things? Do you want to join clubs on campus? Do you want to go travel? Do you want to do study abroad? Do you want to, double major? Whatever it is, right? Do you want to have that flexibility, or you're like, I don't care about any of that. I want to eat, sleep, and breathe my sport. That's something to consider when choosing divisions and what schools you want to go to. Another thing to consider is the type of degree. So like I just mentioned, maybe you want to get a dual enrollment somewhere. Well, that's going to take up a lot more of your time, right? Certain degrees are going to require more of your attention and more of your time and dedication. So I know some of you probably hate getting asked, well, what are you gonna study? What are you gonna major in? You might have no idea yet. So this is something to consider. If you want to go for something specialized, so maybe something down a specialized med track, you want to do pre-med. If you maybe want to go into something like engineering or computer science, something that's going to be more technical, maybe science tracks like chemistry, those are going to require a lot more work. They're going to take a lot more time. They're going to be harder courses to take. And so consider the time commitment it's going to take for your academics. Do you want to be in a super competitive and intense sports scenario with that? Can you balance that? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. So something to consider. But if you're going for something maybe a little bit lighter, less intense than those, so maybe something like a communications degree or a degree in business, right? Those might not require as much intensity as, chemistry majors or biomed. Or those are some of my students, and they talk about their homework, and I'm like, good for you. That's amazing. You're way smarter than I am, at least in that realm. Another thing too is certain degrees might require you to do internships to take time away from your sport, right? So, for example, one of my current players, she has an opportunity to study abroad in Tanzania, and it aligns perfectly with her degree. There's classes she gets to take there. She's going to be doing the work that she wants to be doing after school, and so it was kind of a no-brainer for her to do it, but she will be gone during our spring season, during our lacrosse season. And if she was D1 or potentially D2, she wouldn't be able to have that flexibility. Like the requirement would be for her to be there for a season. Also, to think about if you're taking academic scholarships or athletic scholarships, there's going to be a higher expectation of you to be a part of the team, right? Because that's why they're paying you. So things to consider. How do you balance all of that? Maybe you'd love to play at a really high competitive level, but you want to pursue a degree that's going to require more of your time. So maybe D2 would be a better option, or D3. Another big thing is playing time. So this is totally going to vary by school, not just division, but how important is actually getting on the field during a game going to be for you? Or how important is it going to be for you to be one of the starting players for tennis or something like that, right? For individual sports. That is going to be determined by the school. So this might apply less if you're, golf, tennis, something that's more of an individualized sport, but especially team sports. So that's my world, right? I know teams that have rosters. So for lacrosse, the context of lacrosse, for women's lacrosse, there's 12 girls on a field per team, right? And I know teams that have rosters of like 40 or 45 girls, which is crazy. We have like 20 girls, which is great. And so for those teams that have, double double the amount of players that you need on the field, odds are not everyone's going to play. And so I know, especially for like football teams, those can get massive. At my school, there's like 150 guys on the team. Clearly, they don't travel with that many, and not all those guys are playing during games. So as you're thinking through what school you want to be part of, what program you want to be a part of, those are great things to consider. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you'd rather practice at the highest level possible, and you're okay with maybe just getting 3 minutes of playing time. Or maybe you're like, I want to be a starter. I want to get as much time out on the field or on the rink or in the court as possible. So things to consider. This is going to be questions to ask the coach as well. They're going to have an idea of if you're going to be able to play or not. And again, freshmen typically play less. You work your way up, you build your skills, and hopefully by junior, senior year, you're more of a prominent starter. But just something to think about too. If you're on a roster with a ton of people, maybe you won't even be able to, wear a jersey. You might just be in normal clothes on the sidelines, not even have the chance to play. So. Similar to commitment level is competition level. So again, we have a wide variety of athletes on here. And I think about it too. I watch these 19, 20-year-old guys playing against, Ohio State or something. So they're playing for Ohio State. Maybe they're playing their big rivalry game, Ohio State versus Michigan, right? Massive rivalry. And I think about the pressure that would be. I'm like, you're 19 years old and you're on national TV, millions of people are watching you. And oh my gosh, what if you fumble that ball? What if you miss that tackle? What if you, make a mistake that could potentially be the difference between winning or losing? That's a lot of pressure on somebody, right? Especially someone so young. And so obviously that's not the majority of people, but you got to think that through too. Can you handle that pressure? Do you want that pressure? Do you want something that's maybe less intense? That can help determine and guide you towards a school you might want to be at. Even just the pressure of the coach, right? How much is the school putting pressure on the coach to win games? Each school is going to be different on that, and coaches might not be totally transparent on that as well because they don't want to put that pressure on their students. But those can be some things to consider as well. Do you want to, be intense with your game and want to give it your dedication and your time and attention, but if you lose a game, like how much of that do you want to carry with you for the next day? Do you want to be reminded of your losses on national TV or not? I wouldn't want to be. So something to consider. All right. With all that in mind, I want everybody to grab a paper and a pen, or you can use your phone, whatever you have on hand. We're going to do a little quiz. All right. So I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to give you 4 options, and you're just going to pick the one that applies most to you. So think about what you want your experience in college to be like. So we're thinking of that context. What do I want my athletics to be like in college? So grab a pen and paper and your phone or whatever else you want to write with, and we will go through it. All right. Gotta move all this out of the way so I can read it. So our first question is, how competitive are you as an athlete? So you'll mark it A, B, C, or D, just keep a tally, and then we'll kind of talk about what they mean at the end. So how competitive are you as an athlete? A, I want to compete at the highest possible level against top athletes. B, I enjoy strong competition but value balance with academics and other interests. C, I love playing sports but prefer a less intense competitive environment. D, I mainly want to play for fun, fitness, and friendship. I'll give you a minute, pick which one you gravitate towards. If you're between 2, you can put 2, that's fine. This is not an exact science, it's just to help narrow some stuff down for you. All right, next question. How much time are you willing to commit to your sport in college? A, I'm ready for a full-time commitment, including practices, games, and travel. B, I want a significant commitment, but I need time for academics and social life. C, I prefer moderate involvement that allows me to prioritize academics. D, I want a flexible schedule. Oh, did I finish this one? There we go, with occasional practices and games. There you go. I'll give you a minute. Which one do you gravitate towards? All right. Next one. 3, how important are athletic scholarships to you? So A, very important. I need them to afford college. B, somewhat important. They'd help, but aren't a deal breaker. Ugh. C, not important. I'm focused on academics or financial aid. D, I don't expect scholarships. I just want to play. All right. Question 4. What role do academics play in your college decision? So I'll balance academics, but athletics is my priority. B, I want a strong academic athletic balance. C, academics come first, but I'll enjoy participating in athletics. D, academics are my top focus, sports are secondary. So think about what you want to pursue. You'll have 4 years of playing a sport, but at the end of that, you'll have a degree, hopefully. All right, 5. How skilled are you in your sport compared to your peers? So A, I'm one of the best in my state and regularly compete in national level tournaments or something equivalent. B, I'm a strong player, often a standout at the regional level. C, I'm good at my sport, but I don't consistently compete at a high level. D, I love playing, but wouldn't call myself a high level competitor. So this one takes a little honesty. Evaluate yourself truthfully. All right, next question, 6. What kind of campus culture are you looking for? So A, a large sports-centered school with lots of spectators and school spirit. B, a medium-sized campus with balanced emphasis on sports and academics. C, a smaller academically focused campus with close-knit athletic teams. And D, a campus where sports are low pressure and inclusive. So meaning anyone could join. Maybe there's a lower barrier to get into the sport. All right. We got 2 or 3 more questions. Number 7, how much do you want to be involved in other school events or activities, such as clubs, events, or student organizations? So A, I want to be focused on my sport, and I don't care if I have time for other activities or events. B, I'd like to participate in a few other clubs or events when I can. C, I want to actively engage in clubs, leadership roles, or other campus events. D, I'm very interested in being involved in multiple campus activities besides sports. So think about that. Do you want to be a part of events, clubs, colleges? Most of them put on a lot of events. So, all right. I think we got two more. Question 8, how important is building friendships outside of your team? So A, my team is my primary social circle, and I'm okay with that. B, I'd like to make friends on my team and have some connections outside of sports. C, I want to balance strong friendships on my team and plenty of time to meet others on campus. Oh my gosh. D, I value making diverse friendships and connections across all areas of campus life. All right, I think we got one more. Yeah. D, or what? 9. How important is guaranteed playing time to you? So I'm willing to compete hard for a starting position, even if it means limited playing time initially. B, I want a chance to compete for significant playing time, but also value being part of the team. C, consistent playing time is important to me, even if it's at a slightly lower competitive level. And D, I'm more focused on enjoying the game than worrying about playing time. So think through which one applies most to you, which one you feel you'd want the most. Here we go. Got some A's in the chat. There you go. All right. So the breakdown of these, probably no mystery. If you got mostly A's, NCAA Division I is a strong fit for you as your focus is on athletics and involvement in other activities may be limited. So you are okay with your world being your team and your teammates, D1 might be a better fit. If you're mostly B's, NCAA Division II or NAIA may suit your balance of that commitment to your sport and interest in other campus events and involvements. So mostly C's. NCAA Division III is probably a good fit. It allows for that significant academic and extracurricular involvement while still playing your sport. And with that too, someone that played under me who actually now coaches with us, actually, she works at Enlighium now, which is fun. So Addie, she did choir in school too. So she was a music major and she was part of a lot of the choirs. And choir travels a lot. They have events all the time. And so because she was Division III, she was able to do the arts, do music while also being an athlete. So that's not always the case for some of the other divisions. And if you got mostly D's as your answers, club sports or just intramural provides that flexibility. So there's not so much commitment that you feel overwhelmed or that you can't do other things. It allows for a lot more flexibility on your part to choose when you want to play, to choose how much you want to play. All right. So again, this isn't, hopefully going to solve all your problems or help you figure out what school to go to, but it is really good to consider some of these things. Being honest about what you want can hopefully help focus in on the type of school you want to go to. So with all of that said, let's talk through what that recruiting process looks like. Just a little bit. Again, this is going to be overview, nothing too detailed, but hopefully to help you kind of get started. Also, there should hopefully be some time at the end for questions. So I know we're talking about a lot of information. If you have questions, please chat me or Susanna, who's on the chat as well, and we will get to them at the end. Okay, so first step in this recruiting process is you need to create your initial list of schools. So this is going to take some research on your part. And there's a lot of things to consider with this. What size school do you want? The questions that we just asked. So what's that commitment level, intensity level? Do you want more balance in your school, less balance? Are you going for an intense degree that's going to require more of your time? Maybe you're not really sure about what you want to study yet. That's fine as well. There's going to be some flexibility with that. But figure out what you're looking for as best as you can, and it's going to change, it's going to evolve. So you're not trying to get all the answers right, but you just want to create that initial list. And I think some things that might help with this, either you or a lot of time your parents might have some input on how far away you should be from your home. So I moved 2,000 miles away from where my family lives. And I didn't do that to get away from them or anything. It's just the path that God had me on. Um, and it would have been nice to be closer to them. And I know there are families who, maybe you want to live at home, save some money that way. That's an option too, depending on where you live. It's totally going to change. I'm from Ohio. I know there was at least 15 good schools I could have gone to and lived at home. I was within driving distance of like two really big D1 schools, Kent State University and Akron University, right? Those were literally driving distance from my house. So it's going to vary, but just create that initial list and it could be any schools. And what I'll say with this, there might be some schools that you're like, most likely not going to work for me. Maybe base that more off of what we were talking about. So maybe immediately you're like, oh, D3 is not for me. Like, that's not what I want. Or maybe you're like, oh, I never want to do D1. That's not for me. Okay, that knocks out a lot on your list already. But I will say, just try out the schools. Just don't take them off too soon. You never know. I have talked to so many players who discredited a school and said, I'm never going there. And then as they went through their journey, that's the school they ended up choosing. So never say never. The school that you might not think is a good fit for you might actually be a really good fit. So create that initial list of schools. It could be 10, it could be 50, just create it. Next, you're going to collect your recruiting materials. So this could be things like film. So film of you playing in games is awesome. References, statistics, accolades, achievement in your sport. So were you a captain? Did you break any records? What were your stats like? This is going to be important to you, obviously, for like individual team sports. So if you ran cross country or something like that, obviously those points all add together, but you're a runner individual to yourself. Track's going to fall into that same category, but then especially tennis, golf, those types of things. What things also were you able to do? Like, were you given awards on your team? Were you given any shout outs, anything like that? Start collecting those things. Film is going to be huge too. That's a great way to people who have never seen you before to obviously watch you play. Even if it's something, if it's not you playing your sport, even if it's you doing drills, you doing, warm-ups and things in the backyard. I've been sent those videos from recruits before, and even that can be really informative, and it can show me, oh, this person puts in work outside of their normal season. That's awesome. So start collecting some of that information. Then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to contact coaches directly through email. So email is going to be your primary way of communicating. There is a lot of rules and regulations from NAIA to the NCAA about how coaches can and cannot communicate with student athletes. So, for example, my sports, I know this isn't true of all sports, but for lacrosse, I have to wait until I can email players, that's fine, but I can't actually talk to you in person or even on the phone, I don't think, until September 1st of your junior year. And that's just to help kind of protect kids, to make sure that there aren't recruits trying to come after you as a freshman, which has happened before, and it's crazy. So each division has some different standards with their timelines on what they can and can't do. NAIA is going to be different than NCAA. So just contact coaches directly through email. That's going to be the best way to communicate them. And it's going to be the best way to introduce yourself to them, right? So in this email, you're going to include those resources. So footage of you playing, any stats about who you are, you're introducing yourself to them for the first time, right? It's also great in these initial emails to be a little personal in terms of, hey, why are you reaching out to this school? What about this school attracts you to it? Is it, oh, I've been going to your game since I was little because this is a school right around the corner from my house? Or is it my parents went here? Or, I just love your program, or I'm interested in this specific degree that your school has to offer, and I'm looking to play my sport also. Being honest with the coach. Again, don't try to say things that you think they want to hear. That's not helpful. We want to know who you are and see if it's a good fit for both of us. It's a two-way relationship, and the people that you contact might end up being your coach for the next 4 years of your life, right? So start that relationship off well and honest, and it's going to get you a better process overall. So So next, attend recruiting events if you can. I know people are limited on what their availability is, what their finances are. Totally understandable. Sometimes in the sporting world, things get really expensive, and I don't always like that. But if you can be a part of traveling teams, if you can compete in different competitions, if you can be part of maybe summer leagues, fall leagues, anything, anything outside of your season, typically see if you can just get more experience, more playing time. I know in lacrosse, summer leagues and traveling teams are huge for the recruiting scene. So we put on tournaments specifically for college recruits, right? And I know other sports do similar things. So maybe do a little research, see what's available in your area, but see what you can do. Again, it's okay if you can't do some of these things. Totally, totally fine. It's not a requirement, because obviously I know I was limited growing up. We couldn't do all the events we wanted to do for financial reasons. So if your high school team is all you have, that's totally fine, totally great. But see too, maybe there's camps you can do. Maybe there's clinics you can do. I know colleges put on camps and clinics to try to get recruits in, right? So if you're interested in a couple schools, check out, see if they have any recruiting events, and see if you can do a camp for a day or a clinic for a couple days, whatever it might be. And throughout this whole process, keep reaching out to coaches. If you don't hear from them right away, in a week or two, it's totally fine to check back in on them. In terms of when to reach out to them as well, if you're a freshman on the call right now, you probably don't need to reach out to a coach, right? Just keep some of these things in the back of your mind as you go through your high school years and as you learn about different colleges and stuff, kind of take this information with you. But freshman year, a little too soon. Sophomore year, also pretty early. A lot of times coaches will run on like a 2-year timeline. So right now we've done a lot of recruiting for 2025 graduates, and we're looking at 2026 graduates and maybe some 2027, right? So my sport, we totally be looking for 2025 still. But some teams might be like, nope, we have a full roster. We're not looking for any more 2025. So if you're a senior, you might come across some limitations with that, but definitely your junior year, prime time, that's when a lot of people are looking to recruit for you. So junior year, beginning of junior year, end of sophomore year, that's a good time to start to contact coaches, and just keep that communication up throughout the year. Let them know about tournaments you're competing in. Let them know about games you have coming up. Any new information that might be good to know about. Then, as best you can, school visits, both unofficial and official, are awesome. So again, if you're looking at schools kind of all over the country, traveling might be hard to do. I do know a lot of schools can provide finances for people because schools want you to come visit, because if you visit, you're going to be more likely to go to that school. And reach out to the school, see what they have. I know sometimes they'll provide finances for families that are looking to attend the school. So an unofficial visit is like you decide to go visit the school on a random Tuesday. And maybe you're connecting with the coach and the coach is like, yeah, you can come watch one of our practices, come see how we do things, totally. But it's not an official visit. But colleges will put on official visits, normally over a weekend or something. You can attend classes, you'll talk with admissions counselors, you'll get to connect with the team, you'll get to meet the coaches. These are great, great opportunities for you as a student athlete to kind of feel out what the school has to offer, not just athletically, but academically as well. You'll be able to sit into classes, meet some teachers. You'll get to stay in dorm rooms potentially. So really get a feel like, okay, can I see myself being here? So school visits are awesome. They are so helpful. Sometimes they also provide scholarship opportunities. So I know at Whitworth University, where I coach, if you come for an official visit weekend and then you end up going to the school, you get an automatic $1,000 of scholarship, just tuition off, right? So talk to the school, talk to the admissions counselor and the coaches to see like, hey, maybe they offer that kind of stuff. But sometimes you have to come during certain weekends in order for that to be the case. And then as you're going through it, evaluate your offers, whether they are verbal or written. So sometimes in a meeting, you could ask them like, if I were to decide to come here, would I have a spot on the team? And the coach might say, yep, we would love to have you. Even if it's not officially in writing, those verbal agreements are still really big. So evaluate what's being offered to you, right? If you're getting finances, scholarships, whether that's athletic or academic or other, evaluate what you have to offer, right? What's being offered to you, I should say. And, have those discussions with your family, friends, trusted people in your life, and they can hopefully help you navigate what's the best offer for you. Now, this piece is huge. This is coming from a college coach. This is huge. Reject schools throughout the process. So if you begin talking to a school and pretty quickly you're like, yeah, just not feeling it. I don't think I want to go here. Just let them know. Please don't ghost college coaches because it's heartbreaking and it's so difficult when that happens, when you're chatting with a recruit and it seems like a good fit maybe at first, and then you just never hear from them again. That's so hard, and we don't know if we should keep reaching out to you or if you've decided to move on to a different school. Be very kind to the coaches, be a good representation and example. And if even if coaches reach out to you and you're like, that's not the right fit or it's not the right school, just let them know. That way they'll take you off their list and you won't have to hear from them anymore. They won't bother you. And then the coach knows that they don't need to worry about continuously reaching out to you. So as a coach, please do that. And then the last thing is you choose your final school, right? You evaluate all the things, keep it all together, and then you make that final decision, call that coach and let them know the happy news, and they will be able to celebrate with you. And hopefully it'll be just a great start to those 4 or 5 years that you have for college. Okay. Oof. All right. We are almost at the end. I know we're running short on time and I would love to get to your questions, but I'm also super happy to get to questions afterwards as well. I'm a coach. I love helping other athletes no matter the sport. So if we don't have time for the questions at the end of this call, I will share my email or have somebody else share my email with you guys, and you are more than welcome to reach out to me. Even we can do a phone call as well. I'm 100% here for you guys. I hope we could find great fits for you as well. So I have a long list, about 30 questions that I will share with you guys after this call of just questions to ask coaches, things that maybe you wouldn't think about. You don't need to ask them all 30 of them. If you want to, go for it. But some things to think about too, in just terms of, asking how many, players in my position are you hoping to recruit? If I were to come to this school, what position would you want me to play? What do you even look for in a recruit? How do you handle, competition of play, or, how do you deal with playing time? What's your decision making on that? What's the team culture like? What's a typical schedule for a student athlete in terms of practices, games, and traveling during season? That's a great question to ask. Some other ones too, are student athletes typically, able to participate in clubs and other events? You can totally ask coaches about scholarship availability. How do student athletes typically manage their class schedule with athletics? And I got a couple more too. So these are just really good questions. I'll share this with you guys, just things that maybe you wouldn't think to ask, but as coaches and students, it's really helpful to get some of these answers. And as you read through it, you might find like, oh yeah, these are definitely a priority to me. Okay, the last couple ones too. All right. Ooh, I know we covered a lot. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being here for all of it. I hope it was informative to you. And I know we only have about 5 minutes. So I don't know if there's any questions that people have. I will say for me, I am totally available to you guys, and I'm happy to take on phone calls. All right, perfect. I see some questions coming in, so I'll let them come in and I'll choose some ones that are good. So someone asked, how can you reach out to coaches? So go on to the school's website. They'll have an athletic page. Find the page, find the sport you're looking for, and then there will be contact information about the coaches. So when you get to the school's athletic page, it'll have all those sports listed. You'll click on the sport, and then it normally has like roster, coaches tab. So find the coaches tab, click on that, and it'll show you information about the coaches, including an email to reach out to them. Ooh, can you stack academic and athletic scholarships? I think that's going to be school dependent, and I don't know off the top of my head. I'm not in the world of scholarships, so I think sometimes you can, but it might depend on division and it might depend on the school. So that's a great question to ask a coach. Good question. Yep. So I'll come over here because somebody asked to see these questions. So I'll also share these slides somehow with you guys as well. Yeah, because it's a lot of questions. Yes, my email. I wonder if I think I can put it in the chat for you guys. So my email. Yeah, because I know too, this world brings up a lot of questions and we can't cover them all in one webinar. Okay, I'm putting my email in the chat. Please reach out to me. Please do that. Absolutely. Okay. Okay, so someone asked a specific question. So about their sport with volleyball, do I have to play every position in volleyball to make it into D2? Probably not. It's going to be school dependent, but that's definitely something to start asking some coaches about as well. But I wouldn't imagine so. Who exactly should you email? Okay, this is great. So I'm an assistant coach, and I think it's really good to reach out to all the coaches. So when you do an email, you can have the main person you send to be the head coach. And then if there's any assistant coaches listed, go ahead and include them, CC them into the email. I think that's great because then all of us on the team know, like, oh, yeah, did you see that email from, Caitlin Smith? Oh, yeah, I did. Okay, great. And so it just lets everybody be on the same page. So somebody asked, what school do I coach for? So I coach for Whitworth University, which is in Spokane, Washington. So it's a D3 school. It's about 3,000 students, high academic school, beautiful campus. I will advocate for it. It's also a Christian school too, more on the liberal side with Christianity, I will say. But yes, it is a Christian school still. Okay, here's some more questions. If you guys want to see those. Okay, someone asked, can you play D1 or D2 with an academic scholarship? Would that cover athletic expenses or not? So if you're playing your sport for a school, you don't need to cover too much typically. Sometimes you do. But yeah, if you have an academic scholarship, it'll cover all expenses. So it's not like academic scholarships only cover academic expenses and athletic scholarship only cover athletic expenses. It's essentially just saying, hey, we'll pay for your schooling or part of your schooling to play a sport at our school. So it's not like that money is only for those things, right? A lot of times expenses of uniforms and warm-up gear and travel expenses, schools do a lot of fundraising for that. So like our team does fundraising for it, schools do fundraising for it. So that way it's not an expense onto the students, but then sometimes students have to participate in that fundraising process. But no, you're not expected to pay for all of that. Some things maybe, I don't want to say never, but like we don't make our girls pay for their uniforms or their warm-up gear or travel or anything like that. Oh yeah, someone asked, would it be okay to email top schools even if it might not be realistic? Absolutely. I think that's fine. You never know. And I will say too, for those who are maybe a little bit younger on the call, so freshman, sophomore, but even some juniors, don't want to call it the seniors, but it might be a little too late. When I was a sophomore in high school, I wanted to play for Ohio State, and somewhere in an email, there's a draft of me reaching out to the head coach there. And I was just going to say, hey, I'm Danielle DePace. I'm from Ohio. Like, here's a little bit about me. And I want to play lacrosse at Ohio State University. What do I need to do to make that happen? Right. So as a sophomore, I was like, I know I'm not good enough right now, but I have 3 years. And reaching out to a coach and asking them, hey, what would it take for me to play on your team is huge. Because it tells me you care about the sport, you care about the school, and you're willing to put in work outside of the team to make that happen. So yeah, reach out to them. You never know. All right. I am totally okay with staying for a few extra minutes. It is 11:01. So if you need to head out, go for it. But I'm going to stay and keep answering these questions as long as Kim and Suzanne are okay with that too. So yeah, totally email ones. Okay, I've heard the term walk-ons. What are they? I think a walk-on would be My guess is that is someone who maybe comes in later in the year. So I know sometimes we have transfer students come in. I do know walk-on also has to do with some recruiting and that kind of stuff. So I'm not an expert on that. I've never dealt with it, but walk-ons, yeah, it might be someone who maybe doesn't go through the official process of it, but maybe comes in halfway through the year or something like that. So we've had some like transfer students come in halfway through the year, but I don't know if I'd call those walk-ons. Also, too, walk-ons can also be maybe you're just starting out in the program, but you're good enough and you're gonna be a starting player at first. Are dorms and dining paid through scholarships? Sometimes, yeah. So obviously, if you get a full ride, all those expenses are typically paid. Partial ones, part of it can be paid. So that's going to be school specific. So if you just ask the coaches about that, ask the admissions department about that. They'd be able to answer those questions. Each school is going to be a little bit different on that. But yep, typically scholarships will cover those expenses. All right. Okay, this is a good question. Okay, what do you think is the probability of an international student getting recruited? How does that happen? Great question. I think it totally depends on the division. I don't think I've ever had any international students, but I know that's going to be regulated through the NCAA or NAIA. There might be some different requirements. I know in high school there's limitations to some things, and I'm not as familiar on the college level. But I'm trying to think if we've played against any international students. We may have, because that's a really common thing for students to come over. So, um, yeah, that I actually would be interested in doing more research on that. I don't have a great answer for that, but I'm sure there is a path for international students. But I imagine there would probably be some limitations. Oh, by any chance, do you know anything about Women's U.S. Naval Academy lacrosse? So fun fact, my mom was a lacrosse, she just retired, but my mom was a lacrosse coach for years, and one of her players is actually playing at the Naval Academy right now, which is so cool. Caroline, I forget her last name. So I don't know if I've actually met that coach before, but yeah, so the U.S. Naval Academy, it's going to be a similar recruiting process to any other college. The best thing is to reach out to the coach. But I do, yeah, that is, I'm assuming you play lacrosse, or maybe you don't, but yeah, so that is my recommendation would be to reach out to the school if you're interested in it, and their coach would be able to tell you a lot more about their program than I could. But I do know with some of the military schools, yeah, that requirement might be a little bit more intense, obviously. But I know from them, and there's also the Air Force Academy, Navy, Army. I have known some of my friends' kids who ended up playing soccer at some of those too. So, oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, for the international question, that is an interesting scenario because you live outside the US, but you're graduating from a US school in Enlighium. So, I think it would probably be dependent on your address versus where you went to school or graduated schools, because I'm not sure about online school. That is an interesting thing, but I think once you graduate high school and then if you were to attend a college, you would be an international student if you're going to school in the States. And so I think you would still have an international status even if you graduated from a US school. Right. All right. Well, if anyone has any more questions, I'm happy to answer them, but feel free to email me. Be happy to email. I would be happy to set up a call. We can talk more about these things. And also too, I'm happy to look up some of this information for you as well. So, all right. Well, if that is all, I am gonna stop sharing my screen. Thank you everybody who was here, who stuck around as well. Your questions were really great. Oop, I see some more questions in too. So if you have to jump off, feel free to do that. Someone asked, when you are looking at highlight reels, what is most impressive? What do you look for? So I'm gonna assume you play lacrosse. Hello. It depends on the position you're playing for sure. But for me, like I'm looking at I think it's easy for me to read like how intense somebody is. So how committed they are. Are they, you know, giving a lot of effort in their videos? That's going to be great. So highlight reels. Yeah, I'm totally looking for, shots and things like that. But even for my sport specifically, like if you're going after ground balls a lot, if you're getting interceptions, like to me, can you show me that you are like an athletic player on the field, that you um, demonstrate like a high IQ for your sport? Those things I can pick up pretty quickly when I'm watching film. Oh, you play attack. Yay. Okay. So yeah, so for attack, sorry if you're not lacrosse people right now, but for an attack player, yeah, I mean, I'm looking for like obviously great goals, dodges, speed is a huge thing too. So if I'm like, oh, she's going real fast, that's hugely appealing to us as coaches. Um, yeah, and also too, I think highlight reels don't have to just be like you scoring goals. I think it's also like, hey, show me your cuts through the eight. Show me how you work with your teammates. Assists are huge too. Like I don't want to just see that you can make a goal, great, but can you work with your team? Are you working together? Are you doing plays? So um, yeah, those are great questions. Raina, if you want to talk more, I'm so happy to talk, especially with the cross. Awesome. Okay, well, I'm going to call it. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And yeah, if you have any more questions, I'm happy to help. Even questions of like, hey, can you review my email that I want to send to this coach? I would be so happy to do that for you guys. So everybody have a great rest of your day and good luck on all your athletic and academic endeavors.